Well, hello there. Welcome back to this Cathedral ranking series I started. So, the first video actually did better than expected, and I received a lot of feedback and support. Turns out, more than just a few of my friends saw it, which is a welcome surprise. Thank you. I'm not going to have a long intro this time, considering how long my explanations were last time, so if you're not up to speed on what I'm doing here, I suggest you watch the first video. I'm making these into a playlist, so start at the beginning. The only thing I will say now that I forgot before is that American cathedrals, while some are truly big, grand spectacles, most of them are not. They are beautiful churches and oftentimes large compared to other churches in the diocese, but they're not huge. If you think we have cathedrals like the ones in Europe or Latin America here, think again. Comparing American cathedrals to European ones isn't even comparing to apples to oranges. It's like apples to watermelons. They're basically uncomparable is what I'm saying. But that being said, I think we still do have the most unique array of cathedrals with all the different architectural styles. And the cathedrals of Pennsylvania are a great example of that. That's what I'm doing today, ranking all of Pennsylvania's cathedrals, aka the Philadelphia province. There are 8 dioceses and 9 cathedrals, so let's get to it. First, or rather last on the list this time, is the Cathedral of St. Peter in Scranton. I should mention real quick that some cathedrals in the same province have the same name, and that's especially true here. Located in the city where The Office takes place, which, by the way, I read somewhere that there are people who genuinely thought Scranton was a made-up location for the show, but this was built as a parish church before it became the cathedral. Even though it's Roman, the exterior to me almost looks a bit Slavic in design. Maybe it has something to do with the rounded top spires. This is another cathedral that's small. In fact, it's the smallest in Pennsylvania, I believe. I like the front of the exterior. It reflects the overall style of the northeast part of the state. Where it unfortunately falls apart, though, is the inside. The way I'd describe it is bland. There's just not a lot there. The church is carpeted, but it's that filthy carpet you'd find in old office buildings, and not lush red carpet like at St. Matthew's Cathedral in Washington. I will say I really like the painted stations of the cross. I think they're the best part of the nave. The sanctuary is lackluster, honestly, which is a real shame. I'm not usually a fan of the bishop's chair being in the center, although the chair itself is really nice. I like the red cushions. The sanctuary itself isn't high enough either. Like, I think there should be an extra step up. Like, it should be physically higher up than it is. The only real noteworthy thing is the painted mural on the wall. That's good. But other than that, there's just not really much there. It's plain. And it sucks because it's not necessarily a bad cathedral, it's just really lacking compared to almost every other one in the state. While it's technically not called a co-cathedral, the Cathedral of St. John Galbert basically serves as the co-cathedral for the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown, as it's in Johnstown while the primary cathedral is in Altoona. This is another one on the smaller side, but it doesn't look like it from the outside because of its massive spires. I like how the right one is pretty much stupidly tall. It sort of gives the cathedral a castle-like look. The spires are absolutely the best part of the exterior. Once you go inside though, you see not only how small it is, but also that it's kind of bland as well, although not as bland as the last one. There's more color in here, and the floor is tile instead of that cheap office carpet, and I like the painted ceiling too. The sanctuary though is pretty lacking. Again, I don't like the chair. I don't like that the chair is in the center where the tabernacle should be, and really there's just not enough decoration. But don't worry though, the rest of the Pennsylvania cathedrals are a big step up from these two. Another cathedral that I have been to, this is the Cathedral of St. Catherine of Siena, located in a historical residential area just outside downtown Allentown. This is actually the newest cathedral in Pennsylvania, only being built in the 1950s. Now from the outside, it doesn't look that impressive at all. It looks like your run-of-the-mill mid-1900s parish church. And that's because it is, or it was built to be, as this is another church that was made a cathedral after it already existed rather than a cathedral built to be the cathedral. This is an example of it's what's on the inside that counts, as the difference is night and day. I will say though, I do like the pillars on the outside. It gives it a truly Roman feel to an otherwise contemporary exterior. And fun fact, the first Bishop of Allentown is buried on the front lawn to the left of the entrance. Once you go inside, you see the difference immediately, as the inside is what I'd like to call contemporary done right. First, the cathedral's not big, so the designers made up for it by making it beautiful. I love the tiled floor, and while you can't see it from the picture, the floor under the pews is carpet, but an actual lush carpet and not the carpet from the previous cathedral. I love the round golden frame stations of the cross, and as I said before, I really like tiled ceilings. The best part is obviously the sanctuary, which is completely painted wall to wall with murals, and trust me, they look much better in person. The sanctuary looks completely Roman with pillars and columns, plus the gold wall behind the tabernacle is also a mosaic. I'm also a big fan of the pink marble used for the floor, the altar itself, the bishop's chair, and the pulpit. Plus the baptismal font is very fancy too. Fun fact, this is one of the only cathedrals without a pipe organ. They have an organ, it's just electric. And another fun fact, this is the only cathedral in the country named after St. Catherine of Siena. Next on the list is Blessed Sacrament Cathedral, which I've also been to. In fact, this was the first cathedral I've ever visited all the way back in 2014. So I guess this is the one that started it all. This is also my dad's home cathedral, as he grew up in the Diocese of Greensburg. First, I love the location of this one. It sits atop a hill towering over the city. Second, this might have the best exterior out of any Pennsylvania cathedral. I absolutely love how gothic and imposing it looks. And this cathedral has the biggest rose window out of all the others too. I love the tower. It's unnecessary, but it just makes it better. I think the outside is actually better than the inside here, but the inside is really good too. First off, it's definitely smaller in person than what these pictures make it seem. In fact, my home parish can actually seat more people. Aside from that, the interior definitely has a mid-1900s church influence to it. I really like the long, skinny glass windows instead of the wide ones. And as for the sanctuary, it has murals just like the previous ones, only these ones are a lot bigger. I do have to say I'm not the biggest fan of the post-Vatican II sanctuary renovation. It's not bad per se, though. I like the marble used for the altar furnishings, and while the tabernacle is not where it should be, it is very beautifully located off in a side chapel. The best part is the bishop's chair. I actually think this is the best bishop's chair out of any cathedral in Pennsylvania. What other bishop's chair has lion statues as arms? All in all, a pretty solid cathedral for a small diocese, and it's just still wild to me that this was my first one ever. Now we go up to the northwest corner of Pennsylvania to talk about this next one. Located in downtown Erie, right on Gannon University's campus, the Cathedral of St. Peter is, I think, the tallest cathedral in Pennsylvania, mainly due to its giant steeple. First of all, gotta say, I love the exterior stonework. It drastically makes the church stick out from other buildings and even other churches in Erie. And I also love the clock tower on the steeple. I honestly think that if a church has a massive tower in the front, there should be a clock on it. I don't know, it just makes it better. It's definitely bigger than all the other churches nearby too. Like, this is one of those ones where you can just look at it and immediately tell it's the cathedral. On the inside, we have our first real traditional Gothic interior design, with the pointed ceilings and ridged columns. The floor is marble, which I like, and while it is mostly white, there's enough color to make it work. As for the sanctuary, well, that's unfortunately where I have to dock a few points. First, the tabernacle's all off to the right, not in its own chapel, but instead of the bishop's chair, the presider's chair is in the center, where the tabernacle should be. It's just Why? Just genuinely why? And second, and my biggest problem, is that the altar, pulpit, and tabernacle itself are made of wood. Look, I'm fine with that if this was a smaller parish, but this is a cathedral. You gotta have the best of the best. The main furnishing should be marble. I think that's just the standard. Imagine if the altar was the same material as the beautiful high altar behind it. Wouldn't it look a lot better? My favorite thing about the sanctuary, though, is the bishop's chair. I really like the whole setup of it. Definitely a good cathedral overall, but the altar furnishings being wood is what's preventing it from placing higher. Oh, fun fact, this is also my mom's home cathedral as she grew up near Erie. We return to the Diocese of Altoona-Johnstown to talk about the primary cathedral, which also happens to have the same name as the one in Greensburg, one diocese over. And just like Blessed Sacrament Cathedral in Greensburg, this Cathedral of the Blessed Sacrament also stands atop a hill towering over the city of Altoona. The only difference is, this one is vastly superior in every conceivable way. It's our first cathedral on this list with a dome, and our first that is unmistakably Roman Catholic. The pillars at the entrance are an extra nice touch, and while it doesn't have a rose window, the front window does look really good. Now, the inside is not what you might expect. Even though the exterior was built in the early 1900s due to various reasons, the inside wasn't done until the 1950s or 60s. So it definitely has a bit of a newer look on the inside versus the outside, and you know what? It works. I always love tiled ceilings, and this one might be the best yet. The pillars are absolutely massive, and while you can't see them in this picture, there are giant statues of various saints along the sides. I also just really like the color scheme. It sort of reminds me of my own cathedral a bit. The sanctuary is really cool. I love how prominent the altar and pulpit are, and I love the giant golden sun that hangs above. And fun fact, the design on the front of the pulpit is actually the gate to the former communion rail that was removed after Vatican II. I always like it when objects are repurposed. While the tabernacle isn't in the center, it is in a prominent side chapel. My only real complaint is the bishop's chair itself. It's a bit weird. Like, it's fine in the grand scheme of things, but I'm not a fan of the glass back to it. But other than that, this is an amazing cathedral, especially for a very small city and a very small diocese, the smallest in the state, actually. And one more fun fact that I forgot to mention at the beginning, this is another one that I have been to. Alright, top 3. Here's where they start to get really, really good. And this is another one that I've been to, and actually I've been to over half of these Pennsylvania cathedrals. This one's the most recent, though. The Cathedral of St. Patrick is located right in downtown Harrisburg on State Street, just mere steps away from the Capitol building. Usually, a cathedral will be the most prominent looking building in the area it's in, but this time around, the Pennsylvania State Capitol towers over it and almost diminishes it. But as we all know, what happens on the inside of the cathedral is far more important than what happens on the inside of the Capitol. I really like the facade of the exterior. It's definitely the best one out of the other churches on State Street. I will say, however, the dome just doesn't seem to fit. Like, the color of the stone for the dome is different from the rest of the cathedral. It almost looks like it was tacked on at the last minute, even though that isn't the case. But where this place really shines is the interior, which is the best we've seen yet on this list. Walking into this cathedral is like walking into a church in Rome. You can see the Italian influence everywhere, and as a half Italian myself, that makes me very, very happy. We have proper Roman columns for the first time here, and I absolutely love the gold detailing at the top where they attach to the ceiling. I also like the black and white tiled floor. It looks like a chessboard, but it works. And while you can't see it in this picture, there is a large bronze crucifix right as you enter the church. Now we have our best sanctuary so far. It's been remodeled several times, but based on pictures of how it previously looked, this is the best version yet. I adore the main sanctuary piece made of white marble, and the giant brass crucifix above is incredible. The pulpit is prominent, and the bishop's chair, while simple, fits the cathedral perfectly. I also think the scripture verses etched into the wall around the sanctuary and the dome is a very nice touch, as well as the columns that surround the altar. And just to end it with a fun fact, the cathedral actually has a chapel about a block down the street, and that is now an FSSP parish which celebrates the Latin Mass. So that's two Catholic parishes basically almost right next to each other. You don't see that very often. I bet a lot of you thought this was going to be number one. Well, you thought wrong, like the predictable peasants you are. Yes, while numbers of people consider this to be a contender for the best cathedral in the country, I think it's not even the best in Pennsylvania. That being said, it is the second best, and it is absolutely spectacular in every possible way. This is the Archdiocesan Cathedral, after all. Located in Logan Square in downtown Philadelphia, this is the oldest and largest cathedral in Pennsylvania. It obviously has a dome like the previous two cathedrals. The only difference is this one is much larger. The best part of the exterior is easily the entrance. This is another one that's kind of imposing, especially with its sheer height and its massive pillars. The main body of the church, though, is a bit lacking. I don't know, that's really my only fault. Although, an interesting fact, you may notice the windows are very high up. That's because in Philadelphia at the time, the Quakers in Pennsylvania were pretty hostile to Catholicism and had rioted and thrown rocks through the windows of some other churches in the city. So when the cathedral was built, the decision was made to place the windows so high up, no one could throw any rocks through them. Needless to say, it worked. Once you enter the church, your jaw will probably hit the floor. While it's definitely Roman, it's a bit less Italian influenced than the previous one, but still just as beautiful. Once again, you have the chessboard floor and the tiled ceiling. Plus, the church is dark too, which, if you remember, I think is better than a bright one. The sanctuary is huge. The tabernacle is in its proper place, the pulpit is the largest one yet, and the archbishop's chair is a beautiful wooden throne with a lush red cushion. You also have ample seating for altar servers and choir too. And this is the only cathedral in Pennsylvania with a portico above the tabernacle. And it's a gorgeous one, even having a dome of its own. Not only is this the mother church of one of the largest archdioceses in the country, it's also home to the Shrine of St. Catherine Drexel, a Philadelphia native who became a religious sister and helped the poor in so many ways. She built schools, missions, and other acts of charity, especially in impoverished and racially segregated areas of America at the time. She's actually buried underneath the altar in her shrine chapel at the cathedral. And if one saint wasn't enough, this cathedral was built during the tenure of St. John Newman, who served as the Archbishop of Philadelphia from 1852 through 1860. He's not buried here, though. He has his own shrine church in another part of the city. And to end it on one last fun fact, this cathedral is actually a diagonal line towards the Philadelphia Art Museum. It's literally, if you draw a diagonal line from the cathedral about several blocks to the northwest, you will hit the Philadelphia Art Museum, which is famous for its scene in Rocky. To most, this would be absolutely the best cathedral in the state. But too bad I'm not most. And the best cathedral in Pennsylvania goes to St. Paul's Cathedral in Pittsburgh. I've been to this one as well, and let me tell you, my jaw literally hit the floor upon first sight. Located in the Oakland section of Pittsburgh, basically right on Pitt's campus, this is the only traditional Gothic-style cathedral in the state, using the twin spire design. Even though I usually like Romanesque a bit better, if a Gothic church is done really well, it will sometimes go above Romanesque ones. This is one of those cases. It's the second largest cathedral in Pennsylvania and the largest Catholic church in the western half of the state. So why is this one better than the Cathedral Basilica in Philadelphia? Well, it really boils down to my own preferences, and personally, I just think this one is better decorated than all the other ones. Starting on the outside, the first thing that catches your attention, obviously, are the spires. They're so tall you can see them from the highway going into Pittsburgh. Next would be the massive stained glass windows, both in the front and on the sides. They're not rose windows, but they might as well be given how gorgeous they are. And while built in a Gothic style, the exterior has some early 1900s influence, which is fitting, and that's when Pittsburgh's industrial boom started, so the city really got built up then. The inside, though, is breathtaking. The ridged columns are a staple of any Gothic church, and this one's the best one yet. The pews and windows are stunning, and all along the wall are wooden confessionals, representing a bygone era where tons more people, especially in this part of the country, went to confession on a regular basis than they do now. There was a time where, for a church this big, several confessionals were needed and used on a daily basis. Where this cathedral truly shines, of course, is the sanctuary. This is the best high altar we've seen yet. And while, like the cathedral in Erie, the presider's chair is in the center instead of the tabernacle, this one's different. Namely, because the altar and the pulpit are actually made of marble like they should be. The side chapels are spectacular, and I think this is the best setup for the bishop's chair out of all the cathedrals in this video. I know I said the last one was a throne, but this one really does look like a legitimate proper throne here with its setup. Lastly, the tabernacle does have its own side chapel and is either made of solid gold or really well designed to look like it. I know some people familiar with these cathedrals might be mad that I put this above Philadelphia's cathedral, and I get that. But this is my own opinion after all, and I will admit I might be a bit biased towards the ones that I've personally visited, but I truly think this is without a doubt the best cathedral in Pennsylvania. Well, hopefully you enjoyed. This one was longer, but that's because there were more dioceses to cover. If you want, you can like, share, subscribe, whatever. Doesn't really matter much to me. I'm doing this because it's fun. I like talking about cathedrals. Next time, it's the New Jersey cathedrals. Alright, I'll see y'all later.